With spring arriving in Western North Carolina, I have been seeing a clear pattern in my clinic. So, congestion, itchy eyes, sleep disruption, recurrent ear infections. And today I want to explain what is actually happening in the immune system. So, we're going to look at histamine physiology, why some kids overreact, genetics versus environment, when medication makes sense versus supplements. And I think it's going to be a great episode. So here we go. We're going to dive in. And I'm Dr. Ellie. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics, and I'm your local holistic pediatrician here in Asheville, North Carolina. So if you live in and around the area, be sure to look me up because you're going to want to book a meet and greet. Go to my website to do that, www.middlepathintegrativepediatrics.com. We'll link that in the show notes. All right, diving in. So what the heck is even happening in the immune system with allergies? So in particular, we're going to talk about environmental allergies. So we're not doing like food allergies today. That's like a different talk, but environmental allergies. So this is like when you have like tree pollen allergies, which is huge in Western North Carolina. So what happens is pollen goes into the body. Like you breathe it in, it goes into your body. And then your body makes antibodies to it. So what the heck is an antibody? An antibody is just your immune system trying to like kill something. And in this case, it's trying to kill pollen and it's not realizing like, hey, pollen is not like a foreign invader, like a germ or something like that. It just gets confused and it starts making antibodies to try and kill off the pollen. And in this case, they're called IgE antibodies. There's a bunch of different ones, but for this like discussion, their IgE for whatever that's worth. That'll become more important as you guys listen to more of my stuff, because then you're going to start learning like there's different types of these. And then it gets like pretty interesting, especially when we talk about food allergies and sensitivities. But anyway, that's a different topic. Okay. So then pollen comes in, antibodies are like going crazy. And then we've got these things in the body called mast cells. That's just like a word to say it's a certain kind of cell in the body that makes histamine. And histamine, you guys, is like the thing that makes you like itchy. So these IgE antibodies, the antibodies like activate the mast cells. So they're like, hello, mast cell, wake up, foreign invaders, like do something. It's like shaking the mast cell to death, right? And that causes the mast cell to be like, oh my gosh, like I need to go and do something right now. So I am going to release my histamine. So this is kind of like if you were like sleeping and your kid had a fever, you notice that they're crying and you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, they're 104. And like your spouse is out cold and you go running in there and you're like shaking your spouse and you're like, wake up, wake up. Like there's a foreign like invader in our child's body. It's germs. You know, they have a 104-degree fever. And all of a sudden your spouse is like, oh my gosh, like where's the Tylenol? I better do something. I'm activating. Same with the mast cells. Okay. They're activating. And then they're doing something. What are they doing? They're releasing histamine, and that has some effects on the body. Okay. Typically, vasodilation, which is just another fancy word to say that like your veins and your like vessels in your body start to swell. Okay. And they get bigger and they start doing things like there's increased mucus production. So, like, you know how, like, when you get an allergy and you get really sneezy and your nose is running and all of that, that's the increased mucus production. You get all itchy from, this histamine. You start getting congested, all of this. Okay. So, that's like what happens when histamine is released. And it's not that histamine is like bad, it's just a protective thing. But in the case of allergies, it's like an exaggerated response. So this would be like, instead of your spouse getting up and like being like, oh my goodness, they have a fever. Let me get some, I don't know, analgesic or something. Let me take their temperature, see what's going on. Like immediately we're calling 911 and having them come out and like, you're telling them like, bring the, resuscitation equipment, that would be like an over response. And that's what's happening with allergies. So the key point here I want you guys to know is that allergies are not an immune weakness, it's an immune overreaction. Okay. So why do some kids overreact? All right. So first, genetics. So, a lot of times there's like some kind of family history that increases risk. So like you have allergies, your spouse has allergies, or, your child's grandma has allergy, runs in the family. someone has eczema, someone's got asthma. Those all things go together. So eczema, asthma, allergies, they all kind of go together. It's called the atopic triad for whatever that's worth. But if like a bunch of people in the family have that kind of stuff going on, more likely your kid may have allergies or one of those other conditions. Okay. But the important thing to remember here is that for almost everything, I'm sure there's exceptions like genetic conditions, but like in this case, genetics are loading the gun, but environment is pulling the trigger. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because you have some kind of genetic predisposition that you will have allergies, but it means that something in the environment is now kicking it up and causing those genes to go crazy. All right. So, like, what are those things? One, barrier dysfunction. So, when I say barrier dysfunction, that's kind of like, well, okay, like, what do you mean? Like, we don't actually have like roadblocks in our body. Like, what are you talking about, Dr. Elliott? There's like no barriers. Well, turns out they kind of are. So, like, our skin is a barrier. So, like, everything that's like covering, like this covering of our body, that's a barrier. So, we're, creating a blockade with our skin between the outside environment and our inside of our body. The other one is the gut. So this is like anything that it's kind of weird to think about, like anything you swallow or you like breathe in, it's going in through your mouth, down into your lungs or stomach, digestive system. So it's like the outside stuff's coming in. So the gut, like the esophagus and the stomach and the intestines, those are trying to create a barrier also between the outside and the inside because it's exposed to the outside in kind of a weird way. So we need to protect the skin barrier. We need to protect the gut barrier. And if we don't, then a lot of times we get like this increased immune response. We get amplified reactivity. And this can be for a variety of reasons: gut infections, leaky gut, filaggrin dysfunction in the skin, not enough moisture, inflammation, all kinds of reasons that this can happen. But it's something that we need to address, and we probably need to test also and see what's going on in the gut. All right. Another thing that can create like an environmental trigger for allergies is increased environmental load. And so, what in the world is even that? Okay. So, imagine you have like a bucket of water that you're filling up to like, I don't know, you're watering your plants and you like put the hose in there and you're filling up I guess, your watering can and you just kind of leave it there. Well, eventually it's going to overflow. And the same thing happens with things that we do to or put in our body. So you can maybe do like one thing and you're not that affected, but like over time, or some people even can be if they're very sensitive. But that said, generally in healthy kids, it takes a few things to kind of be wackadoo. And then this toxic bucket kind of overflows, this environmental load bucket overflows. And so, what are those things that would cause an overflow? So, maybe we've had some ultra processed food that week. Maybe it was a birthday party and then we had Easter and then there was, I don't know, some other random celebration, grandma's 40th anniversary. I don't know. So we've had some like cakes and we've had some puffs and we were traveling. And so we grabbed some fast food out. And, next thing we know, we're like, oh my goodness, we've had a lot of like ultra processed food, or we just weren't aware. And there was like a lot in our pantry. And oh my goodness, we've been doing Fanta and flaming hot Cheetos. And oh my goodness, like, how is this in our pantry? We've got to get it out. So lots of ultra processed food can really cause a lot of inflammation and immune reactivity in the body. All right. So we need to get that stuff out. Another thing that can add to this, like, I'll just call it the toxic bucket because I think that makes sense, is sleep disruption. So again, if you just had a poor night's sleep, if you have been traveling, if you are on a different time zone, you're worried, you're anxious, your kid is worried and anxious, like all of these things causing a lot of sleep disruption. Maybe you just weren't feeling well or you had pain in your body somewhere and just couldn't sleep. That causes a lot of inflammation in the body. Pollution's another one. So this is something that is so easy to forget about. Like next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm going to go for a nice walk. And turns out like your route, right, is right by some kind of crazy highway. And all the semi trucks are coming by and you're just getting air pollution like crazy. And you're like, what is going on? Or, you're living in an apartment complex and you didn't know, but the person that owns the apartment complex is spraying like all of these chemicals to like control pests everywhere. That can be pollution. Or, you haven't had your water tested recently and you don't have a water filter and you're having water, pollution, things like that. Another thing too, you guys, is like indoor irritants. I think this is something that I actually struggle with a lot because I have 3 dogs, Athena, Willow, and Liam, and I love them, but they are German Shepherd mixes, so they shed everywhere. I mean, we vacuum, like, if we let it go more than 2 days, you guys, this house is like environmental irritant crazy, and dust and dog dander and hair, and it makes me nuts, and like cleaning the vents and like anyway. So indoor irritants can be a problem, needless to say. So if you have dogs or you have kids with stuffed animals that, it's been like a year since you put them in a hot wash, or the curtains, or you've got a big plush carpet in their bedroom, or you don't have house cleaning plants in the house or a HEPA filter, those can all be causing indoor irritants, along with, if you're using toxic chemicals to clean the house and things like that, that can cause a problem too. And maybe we'll do an episode on toxins as well. So you guys will know what to like replace some of those toxic chemicals with. One we don't think about a lot in kids, but I think it's so important, especially nowadays, is stress, chronic stress. So, sometimes we don't really think about kids having a lot of stress, right? We're like, well, that can't be that stressful going to preschool. Like, how hard is it? We've all gone to school, and so we kind of normalize that. But for kids, there can be a lot of different things that you might not think are stressful that really can be, starting kindergarten for the first time, friend group issues, in older teens. Oh my goodness, the social media bullying, that can be a massive problem, schoolwork, homework, the need to be productive, the need to get straight A's, the pressures around getting into a good college or even getting into a good middle school. There's things that are happening so young now, or trying to do sports when you're 5 years old and you're just not that sports kind of kid, or whatever it may be. It's just causing a lot of stress for kids. And then, of course, there's like the big things that happen, of course. Kids go through situations, sadly, where things can get really hard for them. Maybe there's like a disruption in the family, someone is getting divorced, or someone passes on, or you move house, or someone's really sick, or someone's struggling with addiction. Like, there's a lot of things that can cause stress for kids. And so we need to be really mindful of how can we buffer that stress. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And I'll also have to do an episode on adrenal fatigue. But just to give you some ideas, some things would be outdoor nature play, breathing exercises like box breathing, belly breathing, blowing bubbles in your milk to do breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, yoga, supplements, ashwagandha and adaptogenic herbs, those things. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to help buffer stress. And there's also good stress. So we don't want to get rid of all stress, but we just need to be mindful of like how to manage it and how to work through it. And when things are really bad, a lot of times, bringing in a trauma therapist can be really helpful as well. So if you're going through one of those bigger things, really important to seek that extra layer of care with a therapist that's appropriate for your child's age. Okay, so the key point here is when this like toxic bucket like increases as it starts to get higher and higher, like here's your bucket and it's like building and building and building, then all of a sudden it's like overflowing. We call that in the inflammatory load. That increases at the same time as the toxic bucket, and now we're just spewing geysers, and the threshold to have some kind of immune reaction gets lower because your body's just like going crazy trying to like keep up with all that. So parents, this is not like, if you're struggling with something like this, it's not that you're doing it like you've done something wrong. Like, genetic predisposition is real. Like, this clearly runs in families, but we just have to know like the environment still influences like the severity of things. So you just want to make sure that you're looking at your kids' like sleep rhythm, how much protein they're getting throughout the day, in particular morning protein, how much outdoor light they're getting. So that's something we didn't talk about around the stress response and adrenal fatigue. It's important to get some early morning light and encourage like a good sleep rhythm. So the best time to sleep is from 10 to 6. You can sleep more before or after, but like you need to have those core hours. So like teens that are sleeping from 2 to 10, that's not good. Okay. We need to get those like rhythms going. All right. We need to also make sure we're reducing our inflammatory load. And, we're not like necessarily going to like cure everything, but we are going to modulate it. We are going to decrease the amount of toxic bucket or inflammatory load on the body and kind of get it down. All right, when to consider like supplements or medications. So, if your child is not sleeping and it's because of the allergies, that really is going to go backwards. So, if they are so stuffy at night and their poor little nose is like congested and they, are snoring and goo's coming out and they really just cannot even sleep. They're waking up because of it, or maybe they're pausing with breathing. That is going to send things backwards. So we don't want to end up in a cycle where we're just not treating at all, because then the inflammatory load builds and builds and builds because now we've got sleep disruption. Another thing would be to look at like school performance. So maybe they're now so tired or they're so itchy or so gooey that they can't even like pay attention during the lesson. They have no idea what's going on. They're falling asleep at school because they didn't sleep well in the first place and they're just exhausted. That would be another reason. If they're totally miserable and they can't function in life, they can't play the sports that they want to play, they can't go out with their friends because just goo's coming out everywhere. Eyes are itchy. They're coughing up a storm. They're having these more moderate to severe symptoms. Then we really want to make sure we're considering something. Okay. Another thing to think about is like secondary infections. So, like now we have allergies that are causing, let's say, ear infections. That's something that's really common. So, anytime you have congestion in the nose for whatever reason, allergies, colds, teething, who knows, then that fluid can sit like behind the eardrum and just kind of sit there like a swamp. And if your child has ear tubes that drain really well, which is not that many because they don't drain super well until age 5 or 6, and sometimes it takes even longer than that, then the fluid just sits there, turns swampy, and then they get an infection. Okay, so now they're getting secondary infections from the allergies. And sometimes we can treat those with supplements, and sometimes they take more. And if they take more, then you're stuck in like the pharmaceutical craziness of antibiotics, 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 or ear tubes, like surgery. So we really want to try and break that cycle and see if we can you know, do something before that. So supplements that we can use, I'll link this in the show notes, something like Allergy Calm, something like Xlear, the nasal spray before bed. You guys, this is after you've done all of those things of like removing the indoor triggers. Okay. And you've done the sleep thing, you've done the nutrition. Like you got to do that stuff first. It's not just like jump to a supplement. That's not going to do it. Okay. You got to do all the building blocks first. It's like what I always tell people, like supplements are supplemental. If you haven't done the foundations first, it doesn't matter if you take the supplement. Like it might have like some mild effects, but it's not like the thing. Like you've got to do everything else too. Okay. Get rid of those toxic cleaners, before you go buy Allergy Calm. In any case, so those are some things that you can do. You could do the Xlear, you could do the Allergy Calm, you could do some homeopathics. I don't know. The raw honey's kind of like recently come into question about whether like that's like truly effective. I don't think it's harmful to try. If you are going to try it, I would try it before allergy season starts, of the local honeys. But I don't know. Like I said, that's recently come into question. So we'll have to kind of see which way that goes. But there are some supplements that you can do. Quercetin's another one. I really like the supplement by Orthomolecular. I'll link that in the show notes so you can get the discount on my full script store. It's DHIS Junior that has a good amount of quercetin in it. You can also get the one for older kids, just the regular DHIS. And all of those like quercetins and stuff, they stabilize the mast cells. So remember we were talking about like the mast cells will release the histamines. What happens is it kind of like calms them down a little bit. So this is like you've woken up your spouse and they're like ready to call 911 because your kid's got like a fever. And you're like, wait a minute, let's just like recheck the fever. Maybe they're like really hot under their like 10 blankets. Let's just like give it a minute. Maybe we can get some, analgesics or homeopathics or do like a cool bath first. And then we'll see if like we need to call 911. That's kind of like what quercetin's doing to the mast cell. It's like just saying, okay, wait, calm down for a second. Don't release all that histamine yet. Chill out and we'll see in a minute. Okay. And so that's why quercetin's like such a good, supplement. Stinging nettle is also really good. Things like that. Bromelain, like the digestive enzymes. There's other reasons that works, going back to like the gut barrier that we talked about earlier. Okay. That leads us into medication. So as you guys know, I have not thrown away my prescription pad yet. I live very much in the middle. We try to do everything as natural as possible at Middle Path. That said, when things are severe, we use nuance and we use guided decision making to decide do we need a medicine at this point? Are things so bad that we now need to go to that level of something that's medication? Okay. And there are times where Western medicine saves lives. So we don't want to like ignore it. Obviously, if you get hit by a car and you're losing blood, most people would agree that they would need to call 911 and get, some kind of rescue, right? So we're not ignoring Western medicine in my practice. We're combining the two together. And so we're making choices based on the nuance of what's going on with your child at the time. And that's the difference in my practice versus other practice. We're not just slapping things on and putting a band-aid on everything. At the same time, I'm considering all these different aspects. Like, when is it appropriate to use a homeopathic? When is it appropriate to use medication? When is it appropriate to address lifestyle? All those things come together. And that's not like a clear answer that you can just like look up on ChatGPT. It takes a deep dive. It takes like a lot of time getting to know your child, your family, like how you live your life. There's a lot that goes into it. And doing like a one-time visit for that is like not the answer. I can tell you right now. Cause like, I don't know. I'm just going to say this. I get a lot of people that are like, will you just do like a one-time visit? The truth is, I really won't, because I just feel bad because like taking money from people for who want like a root cause deep dive care, like they're not going to get that in one visit. Like you're going to get that over time because you're going to build a relationship with your holistic pediatrician who gets to know you, your family, how you live, what things we need to address, what things affect your child, your genetics, all these pieces that come together. And so I really want to be that pediatrician, not the pediatrician that's slapping band-aids. There's certainly plenty of people that do that. They're usually in insurance-based practices. And that has its place, but it's just not what I do. And it just, integrative holistic pediatrics just like doesn't work that way. But if you are aligned with that and you are thinking like, well, I'm a person that doesn't want antibiotics for the first time and I want to go somewhere vaccine friendly and I want someone that knows my child and my child isn't just like a number and a relative value unit. And like, if you don't know what that is, look at my ADHD episode. Anyway, if you're looking for someone who wants to look at the big picture and get to know you and your family over time and what actually optimizes your child's health and keeps your child's health as a priority over the next 20 years, then that is my practice. So you're going to want to take a bigger look. Okay, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but medication. So antihistamines, that's kind of like the mainstay. Yes, you can do allergy testing. I have feelings about it. If there's something you're going to do that's not an antihistamine, get allergy testing. Okay. So if you are like, I'm going to get rid of my dog if my child's allergic to my dog, then get allergy testing. If you are like, I'm going to cut down all the trees in my yard if my child's allergic to those trees, get allergy testing. If you are going to do allergy shots or sublingual allergy therapy or some kind of allergy therapy, get allergy testing. If you're not going to do any of that, in my opinion, it's a lot to go through to just end up at an antihistamine. And antihistamines obviously are the things that counteract that histamine that the mast cell releases. And then that hopefully prevents you from getting those itchy, watery eyes, the sneezing, the goo, the sleepless nights, all of that. And in kids, typically we're using cetirizine, which is a second generation antihistamine that does not cause as much drowsiness by any means, hardly any at all, if none at all, compared to like something like diphenhydramine, which is like Benadryl. And cetirizine, you guys, the big brand name, Zyrtec. I'm not getting paid by these people. So just these are who they are. And then the other one would be like Claritin. So those are kind of the ones that we usually go to for kids. Would be Claritin or Zyrtec, which is cetirizine, or loratadine are the generics. So you don't need to pay for the brand name. Okay. It's like the same thing. All right. Just go to the pharmacy, look for the one that says Zyrtec, and then the cheaper one next to it that says cetirizine. Just buy that. You don't need the expensive one. That's what I would do. I would give it to them at night just because pollen counts are higher at night. Benadryl is very drowsy inducing. Like I should say in most kids. There are occasional kids that have paradoxical reactions where they're just like bouncing off the walls. I'm sorry if that happens to you, but Benadryl in general is very sleep inducing. So I don't usually use that in kids for environmental allergies. Sometimes we'll use it in like food allergies for young children, but that's a different story. But yeah, we don't want your kids sleeping at school all day. So that's when medication can be helpful in those cases where things are getting really severe. All right. So, like, what is usually getting missed? So, if you go to somewhere that has like a model that is like a 10-minute visit, which again is most insurance based models, where most doctors can only see you for 10 or 15 minutes because they are in a volume based practice where the goal is to push people in and out. And it's just a bad system. They're not necessarily bad doctors, although there's bad doctors and good doctors everywhere. But like for the most part, there are just people stuck in really bad systems with insurance based practices. And also, insurance does not pay for the type of care that I provide. So I cannot take insurance. But if you're in a situation where you're like, I am seeing a doctor that sees a patient every 15 minutes, they just don't have the time. Like they are not going to be able to look at recurring patterns. They are just not going to be able to look at all these pieces about like, is the skin barrier good? Is the gut barrier good? Like, are the environmental toxins taken care of? Are we taking care of the stuff that's going on in the house? Like, they just don't have the time to look deeper. So they're going to focus on what? They're going to focus on symptom control. And that is going to be an immediate antihistamine prescription. And that's okay. It will control symptoms. But if that's not what you're looking for, you actually want to like address the root causes and kind of look at all those layers, then I look deeper. And so you're going to want to book a meet and greet and come and see me. Okay. So things that I kind of look at that are a bit deeper would be like, is eczema present? Because if eczema is present, I'm thinking a lot about gut stuff and doing like a functional medicine program for gut health, as well as probably detox pathways and things like that. So we want to do some functional medicine testing at that point for kids 2 years and older. Ear infections that are clustering seasonally. So let's say it's not winter, they're not getting colds all the time. It's like spring and fall, and all of a sudden they're just getting like a bunch of ear infections. They're not teething. I'm going to be looking to see, is this seasonal allergies? We're going to also be addressing like their sleep patterns. Is their sleep disrupted? Is their fatigue lingering? Like what's going on? Is there anything we can do to address sleep and kind of balance that immune system a little better, along with all of those other things in the house, like the toxins inside the house and the environmental irritants, and like what are we doing for exercise and stress reduction and all of these things. And so we need to look at all of that. So allergy care, it really requires like longitudinal thinking. And when I say longitudinal, I mean like over a long time. So like thinking that's not like, oh, you come in, here's your 10-minute visit and here's some Zyrtec. It's like, what are we doing over the course of time to kind of reduce this environmental overload? And so the pattern recognition changes the treatment decision. And so we need to see your kid over some time and get to know you so we can get to know what's going on in your family. And that's what I do because I have 45-minute visits that are just with me. You're not seeing a medical doctor. You're not filling out paperwork. You're not sitting in the greeting room. Yes, I call it the greeting room because nobody waits. Okay. All right. So you're actually with your doctor, like working the problem and getting answers. Okay. So if you're in Western North Carolina and your child is struggling literally every spring or fall with recurring patterns, this is the kind of care that we focus on in our membership model. And if you're looking for the longer visits, you're looking for seasonal, prevention planning, you're looking for a deep dive, you're looking for root cause care, you're looking for true partnership with your pediatrician who's actually going to listen to you, then book a meet and greet. And I will link that in the show notes. And if you don't want to look there, just go to my website, www.middlepathintegrativepediatrics.com. Integrative, Integrative. It's really not integrative. It's integrative. Then go to that website and click on book a meet and greet. And I would love to get to know you. And remember, allergies are not a flaw. It's not anything that you're doing like wrong. It's not bad parenting, anything like that. It's a signal. And understanding the physiology really gives us some options. So thanks, guys, for listening. I'm wishing you well. Again, I'm Dr. Ellie. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. If you live in and around the area, be sure to look me up. And next week, we're going to talk about immune regulation versus immune boosting. All right. Wishing you well.